This is my 5th attempt at recording this video. So apologize if I sound dead because I am. I've been trying to record this video for I think an hour and a half now in total. So just keep that in mind if I sound kind of like a corpse trying to crawl my way to someplace while I'm talking, right? Okay. Rambling aside, today we're going to be talking about Varus the Thorn, one of my personal favorite Arena of Valor heroes, for several reasons that I'll get to later. So before we start on her character design, we're going to talk about the splash art that she has. And not a lot to say here, the splash art is very well done. Her weapon, leads your eye through the page very well. And the dark colors of the background makes the reds of her clothing, weapon, and hair pop out a lot more. It's very interesting. The contrast is really nice. And you can see Hands of Shadow iconography on the chair and in her hair clip here, which is very good because it shows character and it shows that she has relations to the Hands of Shadow, which is a criminal organization that exists in AoV. It's good. It's good when you put in character and personality and traits within the splash art. It gives a cool insight and window into who this character is without us even looking at the character design all that much first. So with that out of the way, we're going to talk about her in-game design, the cool stuff, right? So before I talk about her in-game design, there are 3 main things that I want to first point out, or rather discuss. So when I look at character designs, I have a very specific way of how I analyze it. So first of all, you would look at a way the character design communicates their role and faction in game. Second, you would look at how the character aspects visually storytell to you, right? How well the character design actually communicates things about this character to you, whether it's clear and concise or it doesn't make sense. The third and final thing is reading through lore, because now when you have lore and you have a clear idea of what the character design is like and you read the lore, finally you can make the connection between lore and the character design elements, So we slowly build up our understanding and we slowly build up our analysis of the character through this 3-step format. So first of all, let's take a look at Varus's design and see how well it communicates her faction and job within the game. So first of all, I think her costuming does a very good job of communicating her faction, since she is an Athenor champion / human champion, which means that we want her color scheme and the designs of her clothing to look a certain way, right? And because they're using a lot of browns and blacks within her costuming, it clearly communicates the idea that she is an Athenor champion, because that's the color schemes that they usually use. It's usually blue, brown, black, and sometimes a little bit of white. And I think it works. It looks legitimate, It tells us that she is an Athenor champion. That's good. And I think her design also communicates to us very clearly her role within game, which is a warrior assassin. And this is true by the fact of her utilitarian looking clothing, It doesn't look like something a mage would wear in a sense. It looks like someone who does physical combat. They'll wear this because it's utilitarian. It looks like something you would fight in. And also the focus on her weapon, right? Her weapon is a huge part of her character design, and you can't really have Varus without her iconic weapon. And the fact that her weapon is such a big part of her design communicates very clearly to us that she is an offensive character, and her job in-game is to be offensive and to engage and fight instead of tanking for the team. So I think, first of all, step 1 out of the way, she does that fine, that's good. If a character cannot clearly communicate faction and job in-game to us, then they have already failed, but Varus does a very good job of this, so we can continue on. So secondly, what does her character design communicate to us, and what does it tell us in terms of storytelling, right? So this is where we get the really interesting analysis. Okay, before I talk about Varus's design, there is something very important we need to get out of the way. Varus is a highly sexualized character. Okay, now that's out of the way, that's actually a good thing. Why? So my view on these types of things is that sexualizing a character is not in and of itself bad. It's in the way you do it that makes it good or bad, right? So inevitably, I'm probably going to have a video out on either Aram, Mina, Telenos, or Vera. And I'm gonna, in those videos, probably talk about why their sexualization is bad and why Varys's sexualization falls into a different category from theirs, right? Okay. So why I think it works for her is because of this. If you take a look at her design, let's zoom in on here. If you take a look at her design, there are two very stark elements to it. Number one, this huge chain whip of a weapon that she uses, and number two, the absolute abundance of red within her character design, right? Her entire character design is pretty much made out of two colors. One is the more dull leather color of the fabric, which is brown, and then you got this really eye-popping color of red. So before I talk about the red, I'm going to talk about her weapon, which is also a huge part of her character design. Her weapon is a whip. And in terms of visual storytelling, when you take a look at a whip, the two things you're supposed to take from it, or the two main themes that a whip has to it, is this. Number one, it's blood and torture and violence. That's what a whip symbolizes, with the whole, you would whip like someone in order to cause a lot of pain, to make them bleed, blah, 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 right? That's one part of what a whip and its iconography symbolizes. The other part of what it symbolizes is the more sexual element to it, the whole BDSM, someone's going to tie you up, and dominatrix, with the whip and all that stuff, right? So these are two very polar opposite ideas within one piece of visual storytelling. And this is very interesting. At first I thought, okay, maybe they just chose this weapon for her because it was an accident. But then when you look further into Varys's visual storytelling, you'll see that most likely this wasn't an accident, because this is where the color red comes in. They could have chosen any other color, right? Especially because of the fact that she's from the Hands of Shadow, and the Hands of Shadow is a criminal assassin organization. You might expect her to be of like her like costuming and her weapons and her hair to be like a darker color, maybe like a blue or a black or something like that. But no, they chose red. And I think they chose red for a very specific reason as to why. Red also has a double meaning to it, because one of the meanings is, death, blood, gore, that's red, obviously. But the other part of red, and the other the other half of the symbol for red and what it represents is lust, sensuality, love, and those sorts of things, right? So again, this very polar opposite contrast within the two themes of one iconography. And I think it's very interesting that they went with this, because when I first saw Varys, I was like, this contrasting theme, the two very contrasting and polar opposite themes, do they really come together and work? And I think so, yes, because Varys's character and her entire theme is this idea of the femme fatale, the Black Widow, the idea about how this woman is going to seduce you and then kill you because she is an assassin, but she also knows that her good looks and sexuality can be used as an advantage, and this is why also you can see she's wearing high heels, another very like staple trait of like, femininity and those things, right? And also her body is very shapely. She got a lot of womanly curves, I'll say that much. And I think the fact that they made her so beautiful, but also made her such an offensive, focused character is a very interesting dichotomy, right? Because in Arena of Valor, what they did with a lot of characters is they either went like, full on just this guy is gonna kill you because he's dangerous, badass, hardened sort of character. You see that in like Richter, Quillen. Actually, not Quillen. No, not Quillen. Like you would see that in Richter. You would see that in Malik. Those characters. They're fully just hardened badasses who are going to kill you and not think twice. And then you got other characters like Vera, whose only theme is just how pretty and sexual she is. And you strike a very nice medium with Varys, and I really appreciate that. And another thing is her costuming doesn't show off a lot of skin, right? And that's the thing. I really appreciate the fact that they made her look utilitarian, yet at the same time still very much so attractive. You would look at her and go, yeah, this is probably a person that can do some assassin, runs around in the shadows, kills someone, and then runs off into the night sort of work. But at the same time, when you look at her, you would probably also go, yeah, she probably enjoys tying up people with that whip and doing some dirty, dirty stuff to them in the bedroom too. And I like the fact that they managed to strike such a happy medium, because you don't see that a lot and it makes her very unique, right? They made it in a sense where it's like still classy. They didn't go full like skin everywhere sorts of lazy, sexy design. But at the same time, they also communicated very clearly to us that she can turn around and slit your throat if she wanted on an instant, on the turn, and just completely wreak havoc and just spill your blood if she wanted to. But at the same time, she also looks like the type of character that knows she's good looking and will use that to her advantage because she has the good looks. And I like that. I like that a lot. And the fact that her character design so clearly communicates to us with all the iconography and all the symbolism within the color and the weapon type that she uses, and I think that's very good. I think that's a very nice piece of visual storytelling. Like, even her clothing, right? It's utilitarian, yet it's skin tight and accentuates the curves of her body, which is supposed to look sexual, but at the same time, it's utilitarian, and that's very good. Yeah, her character design, very solid, very nice visual storytelling. With that out of the way, I want to take a look at, this one. A few of her concept arts and what they were originally going for. And this is one of the rare cases where I'd say I'm actually kind of happy that they stuck with something like this instead of settling with some of these concept arts. Because I think for this one, and this one, the three on the top and this one on the bottom, I think the issue with these three is they made her too much towards the sensual, and with the sexuality and all that stuff, and making her look too womanly. Because if they made Varys look like this, I don't think I would have been sold on the idea that she is also an assassin, because these four, clothing choices, they look like ball gowns to me. Or at least some sort of deviation of ball gowns, right? And I don't think someone can do some swift assassin stuff and run off while wearing this type of clothing. At the same time, I'm also very happy they didn't settle for this or this, because even though it's a lot more utilitarian, the shape language of her weapons are so sharp. Like, everything about, even her costume, you can see the points on her gauntlets and her shoulder pads, right? And I think everything about these two is just a little bit too sharp to the point, where I think they stray too much into utilitarian and making her look badass and not focusing enough on the contrast, which is making her look attractive and appealing and almost soft in a sense. Because if you look at Varys' character design that they settled with her 3D model, you don't see a lot of sharp edges, right? Even her whip, even though you got the sharp tip, the whole design is still very flowing in a sense that makes it look soft. And I like this balance between hard and badass and the sensuality and the womanly physique and all that stuff. And I think it's a good balance that they struck. And I'm happy that they settled with this and not this. With all of this said, I refuse to put Varys in S tier for character design. And the audience might go, but you said all this good stuff about her. Why are you not putting her in S tier? Well, okay. Here's the thing why. I saved the one complaint I had for her till the very last. And that is her story, her lore. Her lore doesn't communicate what this does. You know why? You read the entire thing, and then you got this lengthy exposition here. Right here, this thing. If the summoner's life force is not strong enough, they run out of blood and end up a dried corpse. If the summoner's will is not strong enough, they become corrupted by the visiting shadow and join them in the abyss. So this line right here is alluding to the is alluding to the ritual that Varys partaked in order to get her powers and get her weapon, right? And reading this, you get the idea that she's a badass, that she is doing all this cool assassiny crazy magic stuff, right? You scroll to the bottom and you read, "The world is going to know I'm better than you are." So this line is alluding to the fact that she absolutely hates Emily for betraying the Hands of Shadow and the criminal organization. And this line here also paints her as a hardened badass, this assassin who's going to kill you without a second thought. You also get this line right here where it explains why Varys decided to partake in the demon ritual that gave her her powers and all that stuff. It talked about she did it to get the powers, to become more powerful, blah, 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 right? You read through all of her lore and zero, nada, nothing in her lore Nothing in her lore alludes to the idea that alludes to the theme of her being a character that is going to use her good looks and charms to seduce you and then assassinate you. It doesn't allude to the sensuality and frankly like the sexual nature of her character, right? It doesn't allude to any of it, which I find problematic because they did such a nice job of visually storytelling to us that this is a dangerous assassin who will also use her good looks against you as a femme fatale sort of character. But none of it is alluded to in her lore. And that frustrates me because if you're gonna do this, then just don't make her this type of character who has this sort of double identity, right? Then don't do that and visually tell us that she is this character who has this very polarizing two characteristics to her, but then don't show any of it in the lore. In the lore, you have to tell us somewhere that she knows she's good looking and will use it. I don't know, maybe slot in a scene where she just got her new powers and then she goes after a target who's a guy or girl, I don't care, and then she like seduces them. And then after getting enough information out of them by charming them, she then turns around and kills them with pinpoint accuracy or something like that. Just throw in something that will allude to the fact that she uses both of her characteristics and she's not afraid of using her good looks, right? If you're going to visually storytell to us that this is what Varys is as a character, show it in the lore. Don't just do the visual part but not followed up in the lore. Since in the lore, if I read this, I would have just assumed she's a full utilitarian assassin who just is like out to kill and out to hunt people in the shadows, right? And I wouldn't have assumed that she looks like this. I wouldn't have assumed any of it. And I think that's problematic. With that out of the way, with that being said, I think Varys is a very tippy top A plus tier character that barely missed out on the S tier, her spot in S tier, just because her lore doesn't align with the visual elements of her storytelling. With that out of the way, she's still a fantastic character. I love her personality, etc. I love her visual storytelling, and I like a lot of it. So yeah,